Hey guys, how's everybody doing today? Good? Good. Today is session 2 of our developmental camp. For those of you that are just joining us for the first time, appreciate you making it. For those of us that are joining us from last session, thank you for coming back. So today, it's going to be the same thing as always. We're going to go through a little bit of a presentation and then talk about today's topic, understanding champions and champion mastery. No, not the champion mastery where you did a little flare above your head in game. Actual champion mastery. So we'll go through that, and then we're going to actually jump into some in-game stuff in the practice tool. If you want to, please pull up your own practice tool, play along on your end. Tell me how you're doing with some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about. So without further ado, we can go ahead and, as always, just jump into our presentation. The first thing I want to do is recap a little bit of what we talked about at the introductory course last time. So we talked about, picking your champion just straight up, right? There's 148 champions, and there's more constantly being released. So it's a good thing to try and actually figure out what you want to play. I'm going to get into some tips later on that are actually going to help you, maybe try and fine-tune and hone how you can actually pick your champion. So if you're not sure yet, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Just think about it. But going into champion abilities, like you saw on the previous screen, or you're probably familiar with, each champion actually has 3 regular abilities. They have their ultimate, and then they have their passive. And that's a minimum of having that. And the reason that I actually say that it's a minimum of having that is that there are some champions in certain situations like Lee Sin or Nidalee or Elise, where whenever you use an ability, it actually turns into another ability that you can use. So at the bare minimum, there's about 740 abilities that you actually have to learn in League of Legends. Now, realistically, it's probably actually more than that. But again, that's the bare minimum. And so the reason that you want to start learning these champion abilities is for a couple of different reasons. One is plays versus counterplays and the individual level of play for you, as well as the individual level of play for your opponent. Trying to understand how those are going to tie into one another. Beyond that, it's understanding the limitations of what you're capable of doing, and then knowing the cooldowns of your opponents and your abilities and what they can do. Gonna kind of get into a clip here that we can talk through. If you were able to make it over to the advanced session earlier in the week on Tuesday, then we're gonna do it the same way. I'm gonna kind of play through the clip, and then we'll kind of go back and go over it. Before I kind of jump into that, I touched on trying to figure out your champion. Try and think through as you're trying to figure out your champion. If you play other games, maybe it's an RPG or maybe it's actually an FPS game that has different champions and different play styles. The way that whenever I started this game, I tried to think about how I could pick my champion. It was looking at it from the standpoint of I have a specific play style, and maybe my play style is a little bit more aggressive. Maybe somebody else's playstyle is way more defensive or way more reserved. In addition to that, I like to play champions that have really high mobility, right? So again, this goes back to why I love Lee Sin so much. We touched on in the first session that I play Gragas a lot, Sejuani, stuff like that. I like to play things with gap closers and with more mobility. And so looking at that, that's why I tend to gravitate towards champions that typically have those within their kits, or with their kits, typically the terminology for their abilities in general, and what they're capable of doing. So try and think of it from the same standpoint, right? If you play something that's very tanky or very defensive, then you're probably going to gravitate more towards champions like that. You're probably not going to want to play things like Twitch or like Sona, where they're extremely squishy. And again, think of the mobility aspect. Are you just trying to focus on, you like to do a lot of damage and you don't really care how much health you have? Take those aspects into consideration when you're trying to, narrow down what you actually want to play. For now, let's jump over to the clip real quick. I grabbed this off YouTube, so no, I did not make the title of Fizz E is broken. I don't think that Fizz E is broken, but this clip displays kind of what I want to talk about. So again, I'm gonna let this play through real quick, and then we can actually break it down and talk about it a little bit. So that's pretty much the essence of it. So the reason that I'm bringing this up is that I touched on the fact that in the presentation, um, knowing your champion's kit and your champion's abilities, as well as your opponents, is really crucial to champion mastery and just understanding the game in general. So Fizz is a champion that whenever you use his E, it makes him immune briefly, and then he can drop down and do damage. And so what happens here is he actually gets really good use out of it twice. There's a Jinx ultimate that's coming up right here from the bottom corner. He's able to use his E, and he completely avoids the ultimate and survives. Now, in theory, that would have actually killed him had it hit, so it's a very good play on his end. The other thing, and this is originally what I was looking for when I was looking for this clip, is how Fizz interacts with Vi's ultimate. So Vi's a champion, the one that you just saw up here on the screen. Vi's a champion that her ultimate is a targeted ability where she locks onto you and she charges at you. Basically, it knocks you up in the air and then it throws you down. Very good ultimate, to be able to lock somebody down briefly, and it's guaranteed to hit, except for situations like this. Fizz is a champion, and as a Vi player, I can tell you this is extremely frustrating. Fizz is a champion that he can avoid this entirely with his E, just like he did with the Jinx ultimate. And so what you see is the Vi is, I don't know if maybe she had the timing down incorrectly, or if she just wasn't thinking about it at all. But she thinks that, okay, he's low, I can close the gap, and then I can ultimate to him. But again, Fizz can just immune the entire ability. So this is what I mean whenever I'm talking about being able to actually understand your abilities, your opponent's abilities, and understanding all the champions that you're playing with or against. That's exactly how that ties into play, is that in theory, if the Fizz didn't understand how to use that ability properly, he definitely would have died. At the same time, it's on the Vi to be able to understand that he's playing against the Fizz. I really shouldn't be trying to go in and use my ultimate if I don't know exactly what the cooldown of his E is, and that I can't go in just yet because I need to make sure that he uses it first. If the Vi had done it earlier, then it would have been a good play, because you saw the Fizz immediately use the E with the Jinx ultimate, and so if the Vi had then immediately followed that up, that would have been fantastic. But too much time had passed, the ability came off cooldown, and so it ends up kind of fumbling the play. So, with that, we can move on to Champion Mastery. And like I said at the beginning of the presentation, no, not these types of masteries. So, as you play the champions more and more, you'll unlock these masteries. These are rank 5, 6, and 7. You get to flaunt these above your head. That's not what I mean by Champion Mastery. That just has to deal with if you play the champion a lot, which does go hand in hand with Champion Mastery. That's just not exactly what I'm referencing in this exact situation. So, Champion Mastery, like I just said, it does come from a lot of time put into the champion. From hundreds and thousands of hours specifically. And there's this terminology that actually goes typically hand in hand with somebody who plays just one champion, and it's called a one-trick pony or an OTP. Now, you can go Google, League of Legends OTP or one-trick pony, whatever, and you'll see tons of people. There's, a player named Pink Ward that specializes in Shaco. There's just tons of people out there that they specialize in different characters and different champions, but they only play that one specific one for the most part. My favorite thing to watch is there's some Chinese Lee Sin players that, if you go YouTube, they do some of the most phenomenal, flashy plays that you can see, and it is complete mastery of the champion because they have devoted so much time to putting into that character. So, with that being said, is with all that time that you devote into actually playing that champion, you're encountering all of these different matches, you're encountering hundreds and thousands of different scenarios within these hundreds and thousands of hours, right? So every match that you play, it's not going to be the same team composition for you, it's not going to be the same team composition that you're playing against, it's not going to be the same randomized dragons, right? It's not going to be the same pathing, the lanes aren't going to have the same outcome, the end of the match isn't going to be the same, it's all different. And so it puts you in all these different scenarios so that you can understand how you can play this champion to the fullest, because you're having to adapt each and every time that you try and play them. So, in addition to that, it leads you to try and derive the optimal decision making through the complete understanding, through being in those scenarios time and time again. At the same time, like I touched on the terminology of kit earlier, you have a higher understanding of how to use that kit to your fullest ability, and we're going to touch on that coming up here in a little bit. In addition to that, every champion in the game, no matter what position you're playing, some people or some positions are going to use this terminology or this method more frequently than others, but at the same time, this is a good skill to be able to take away no matter what you play. So it's kiting and orb walking. So what exactly does that look like? Basically what happens is that every time that you attack, there's an animation between that. And rather than just, if you're auto-attacking, rather than just standing there repeatedly, what you want to do is you want to try and maintain consistent movement or consistent mobility between those attacks. So you attack, and then you move, and you attack, and you move, and just repeat the process consistently. That's why if you ever watch a lot of pro players, they're just constantly moving. There's very little time when they're, or any time where they're standing still. And there's a lot of reasons that they do that. One is that it optimizes your ability to maintain damage output while simultaneously making you a lot harder of a target. If you're just auto-attacking, let's say a minion, or if you're your opponent, it's very easy for them to hit you with skill shots and abilities if you're just standing still, right? And so if you continue to orb walk, it makes it a lot harder to predict. Typically the best thing that you're going to want to do, and I'm going to show you guys how to do this whenever we get to the in-game bit here in a few. And again, I encourage you guys, if you're not familiar with this or if you want to brush up on it, open the practice tool on your end and just try to follow along. And if you're having trouble or if you don't understand it, feel free to say something in chat. It's no problem. I want to make sure you guys get the most out of the session. But you combine it with a function called attack move. So as you guys probably know, just to regularly attack an opponent or a minion, whatever it may be, you just right-click. Now, there's some cons of doing that in that, let's say that you right-click and you don't right-click on the opponent or something of that nature, and you actually right-click to the side of them, well, now you're walking into your opponent. And let's say that you're an AD carry or a support that you're pretty squishy. Well, if you've just walked into an assassin player, then you're probably dead. So one thing that you can use is the attack move function, and it's just another way of inputting that attack command without running the risk of something like what I just mentioned happening. Again, I'm going to give you guys a little better understanding whenever we get into the game here in a moment. The next aspect is what's called animation canceling, though. So like I said a second ago, every auto attack that you do, there's always an animation that goes along with that. Whenever you cast an ability, there's either a cast time or there's an ability that goes along with that. And so the benefit of canceling an animation is that you're able to actually cut off that animation and perform the ability a little bit quicker. Now, whenever I say a little bit quicker, I don't want you guys to get this misconception that, oh, hey, I'm going to do, a combination 3 seconds faster. This is fractions of seconds, but and that's how fast-paced League of Legends is that having fractions of seconds to be able to outperform what you're trying to do on your opponent, that matters enough to if you come out with the winner, if you come out with a loss. If there are any Riven players in chat, best of luck. Happy to be a resource for you. Riven is the queen of animation canceling. And the reason is that, every ability, it has to do, this is a very complex explanation, but it has to do with whenever the damage actually connects based on the animation. And so there's part of an animation after the damage actually connects. So what you want to do is you want to actually cancel the rest of that so that you can follow up with your next ability. So you're trying to perform that in succession as quickly as possible. Let's see. So what we're going to do now is we can go ahead and jump into the actual game itself. Again, if... oh, pardon me. I didn't have my client pulled up, so give me just a second. Again, if you guys... if you can, pull up the practice tool, follow along. We're going to go through a couple of different scenarios for... I'm going to have to jump in and out of the client a decent amount today. Because I want to make sure that I give you guys accurate examples on multiple different champions for the concepts that we're talking about as far as animation canceling, or blocking, so on and so forth. So, with that, the first champion I'm actually going to get on, surprise, surprise, is actually not going to be Lee Sin. I know that everybody's going to be surprised by that if you've been following along in the other sessions, but first champion I'm actually going to get on is Vayne. We'll go over the orb walking piece first, and then we can go on to kind of the animation canceling part. So again, as we go along through this, please guys, if you're following along and if you have any difficulty, please feel free to pop questions in chat. I want to help as much as possible. At the same time, if you have any questions, you know we're doing a Q&A at the end, so please make sure to keep those in mind, or just send them whenever you can, and I'll get to them at the end of the session for sure.
Beware.
All right, so we'll go ahead and take a bunch of items, level ourselves up. That's not what we were supposed to do. There we go. Okay, so if we go ahead and we put up a target dummy here, if I right click, I'm just going to walk up and start auto attacking, of course. Now, I also want to show you guys, this is going into the attack move concept. I want to show you guys how to do this as well. So if you'll go into your hotkeys on your settings, and then go into player movement, this is default bound to A. I leave mine as A. You can bind it to whatever you want, but this is a default keybind to A. So what this does, again, is it attack moves. So if I right click all the way over here, Vayne's going to run up and start auto-attacking. Now, at the same time, if I A attack, she'll walk up and she'll start auto-attacking the closest thing. Now, if I'm playing against this opponent right here, again, if I'm trying to kite him and orb walk, well, then I'm going to be attacking and move back and attack and move back, so on and so forth. Let's say that... let me turn minion spawns off. Sorry about that. Now let's say that I'm trying to kite and I'm trying to orb walk backwards in a defensive manner. Well, if I happen to accidentally right click here, like I mentioned earlier, and let's say that this is, you know, a LeBlanc or an Akali or Talon, whoever it may be, it's an assassin player. Well, now I've just walked into them and given them everything that they need to kill me, basically. So, that's, if nothing else, that's a good reason to use auto attack move. So what you'll do is just A and then click, basically. Click on the person or click on the minion, whatever you're trying to A attack. But you'll see you get that red reticle that's popping up, and that you're just going to attack the closest thing next to you. So as far as the orb walking component goes that we talked about, what you'll start off by doing is you'll A click and you'll auto and then you'll move. So it's a lot easier with... we'll get into the how attack speed affects this here in a second. So I'm going to sell a few items just to give a better idea of this, to get her base movement speed. So if I attack and then I move, right, and then attack and then I move, instead of just standing here and I'm just a stable target and I'm not moving at all, it's really easy for them to attack me versus if I'm going like this. So A, attack, and then right click to move, and just keep doing it over and over. So what's going to happen is that as you level up, as you get items, of course, your attack speed is going to increase, especially on something like an AD carry, right? And so what you want to be able to do is actually manage your attack speed windows, because it's not going to be the same timing in which you would move at the beginning of the game as it is at the end of the game. So you want to make sure that you're keeping that in mind and that you're practicing this a decent amount, because it's going to change for every champion, for every itemization, but you have to get a feel for what your attack speed is going to be. So as you can see, I have to move much more frequently than before. So, with that, that's kind of how you can use that. I mean, another good way to kind of show this is that, let's say I'm chasing down Scuttle Crab, where, well, it kind of makes it a pain to kill Scuttle Crab if I'm constantly just standing still, right? If I'm just standing like this, I keep having to chase, versus, no, I killed it. I can go to this one, though. versus if I'm actually maintaining that movement with it. Not only that, because of how Scuttle Crab works specifically in this situation, you're actually able to corral the Scuttle Crab to the direction that you want because you're able to move around it. It'll follow the, it'll go opposite based on where you are, so you can kind of run it into a wall, and it's a neat trick that is kind of helpful for your positioning. So from there, we can start going into the let's see, clear the target dummies. We can start going into the actual animation canceling side of things. So as I said, there's actually an animation cancel on pretty much every ability. And so if you look at the bottom center of my screen, you'll see that the condemn cast timer pops up for a fraction of a second, right? Put a few target dummies here. So the cast timer's showing up every time. So this is what we can do. You can pull off really flashy plays. You can animation canceling by doing a variety of things in combination with your flash summoner spell. So as you guys may be familiar with, whenever you condemn an opponent into the wall, it actually stuns them. So that's the optimal scenario in which you're actually wanting to use condemn, is trying to get them against the wall so that you can actually get the stun off, get the extra damage. Well, ways that you can catch people off guard by animation canceling and by doing something a little flashy is things like this. So unfortunately, if I use my condemn right here, it's just going to knock them back, right? My positioning's all out of whack, unfortunately, so I would have to move over here. But if they're an opponent that's familiar with Vayne and with what she's trying to do, they can just keep moving this way, right? Or maybe they move the opposite way. They're basically avoiding the fact that you're trying to condemn them into the wall. So rather than having to be the unfortunate victim of that circumstance, what you can do is you can start by casting your E, and then you have to quickly move your cursor to be able to flash to the side of them. So it looks a little bit like that. That will ultimately, you end up having to burn your summoner spell, of course, so it's a very specific situation where you want to make sure that it's actually worth it, that you're, the cost reward is or the risk reward is definitely worth you blowing that flash, especially as the AD carry, as you want to be able to escape and help carry your team with your damage output. So, doing something like that, it can be really helpful. There's a lot of different champions. Again, I just want to show it once more on Vayne. If you're on this side, you have to quickly press your E ability and then flash simultaneously. So if we go back to the first session, remember, if you have your abilities on regular cast, it's going to be a little bit different. You click on your ability, then you'll get ready to use it, and then click it and then flash simultaneously. I have mine on quick cast, so it's going to look a little bit different. But as soon as I use my E, I'm going to quickly move my cursor to where I want to flash to, and then the condemn will go from the position that I'm using it at. Oh, I missed that one. And that's what happens whenever you don't position your flash accordingly. So that's what it looks like on Vayne. I'm going to switch again to, I know I don't want to stick with just one champion to show situations like this, so I am going to kind of bounce across a few different champions to show how this interaction can work with multiple different people. The next one that I'm going to use, let's see, let's use Gragas.
If you're wine, I'm in.
And I'm probably not going to bother changing my masteries after this, but that's fine. Those are wrong, but that's okay. That doesn't matter. So let's see. A couple other champions that we can do. We can do Gragas. We can do Jarvan. I don't have everything unlocked on this account, so I can't go through with every champion. But there's different styles of doing this, so I just want to make sure that I go through a couple of them. Is this new to anybody? Is anybody trying this in their practice tool? Be interested to hear how it's going.
Welcome to Summoner's Rift.
So, if you guys aren't familiar with it, the way that Gragas works is that with his E, is that he dashes into an opponent, and whenever he hits them and collides with them, there's a stun. Same thing, there's an animation with that, right? No cast time like we talked about, but there's an animation with it. He has to actually slide across to be able to actually hit the opponent, just like that. So, one of the great things that you can actually do with Gragas is cancel that entire animation entirely. So, what you can do is, let's say the opponent's over here, well I can E and flash to him, and so not only is that beyond the actual range of the initial E, so it catches them off guard, but it actually cancels the animation too, so that you can actually do the stun. Another thing that you can do is you can catch people off guard. Again, let me toggle the minions off. You can catch people off guard by E-ing opposite directions, right? It just makes them think that, hey, you know, maybe they missed their ability, or maybe they're trying to run away, whatever it may be. But it catches them off guard, and it makes them, you know, not really aware that you're actually trying to E into them. The way that that works is, let's say that I'm E-ing this way. Well, I can actually flash over towards them, and it's the same type thing. So it's a little bit of a misdirection and a little bit of a mind game, but something that you can use to your advantage. So again, it's just a matter of I'm going to cast my E and then flash into them. Let's say that I'm actually acting like I'm running away. I'm going to cast my E that way, and then I'm going to flash into them. So, another way that you can do it on Gragas, for sure, that is really helpful, that I definitely try to use at every opportune moment whenever I'm playing. From there, we can check out some things on Jarvan. And again, if you guys have any requests or any champions that you want me to try out, show you some different ways of animation canceling, can definitely try. If I have the champion, I will try and do it for you. If not, I will see if I have enough currency on the account to buy it, so I can show you.
By my will, this shall be finished. Stand with me, brothers and sisters.
Make sure we get all of our settings done, unlock our abilities.
Find me greater foes.
Cool. So, if you're unfamiliar with Jarvan, the way that Jarvan works is he has what's called an EQ combo. So, whenever you E, it throws your javelin down, and then you can Q to jump towards it. If you just Q regularly, he just kind of stabs his javelin forward. So, you specifically have to use his abilities in this order to be able to make it work. So, the EQ combos is pretty much his gap close in the way that he works. So this again goes hand in hand with the animation canceling, right? Very similar to Gragas, very similar to a few others. If you EQ, there's an animation to that, right? If you want to do, again, it's very similar to Gragas. Let's say that you want to cancel the animation. Well, oh, I messed that one up. And that one. Guys, I haven't played Jarvan in a while, so that's not exactly what I'm going for, though, so bear with me one moment. I apologize. It's been a little while since I played Jarvan, unfortunately. There we go. So, as you can see, halfway through the animation, I'm actually just flashing onto the opponent, very similar to Gragas. This one, as you're starting out, may take a little bit of time to get used to. But it's very similar to all the others. That just goes hand in hand with the champion mastery. The more you practice it, the more you're going to get the hang of it. And I can tell you right now that as you're practicing in the practice tool and you get more comfortable and more familiar with it, that's fantastic. Don't try to force yourself whenever you get into real games to use that exact combo if it's not a good opportunity just for the sake of it looking flashy. I know that there's a decent amount of people out there that now they learn this really cool new flashy thing, right? They need to learn this new ability. And then you're trying to force situations where that looks cool, but it's not actually needed. You don't always need to do something like this, but it can really help, and it can help catch the enemy off guard. So again, much like Gragas, let's say that I'm going to the side or I'm going to the opposite direction, or maybe they're out of range and I really want to catch them off guard. Instead of being able to just EQ towards them and letting them know, and I'm basically broadcasting the information of what I'm trying to do, I'm EQing to the side. Oh, hey, he missed his javelin. Well, then I'm able to flash on to him. Same thing if it's extended out of the range, maybe. Well, again, this goes back to me messing it up. So, like that is more of what I was going for. But if it's out of the range, you can get a little bit of extra range by doing it that way too. So things like this really help. And then of course we're going to play Lee Sin. Why would we have a session where I don't do something on Lee Sin? So we are going to do some stuff on Lee Sin. As I said earlier, I watch a decent amount of content on high-level Lee Sin players. They can do some really cool stuff, some stuff that I cannot even imagine the amount of hours that are put into being able to do stuff like this. I practice it a decent amount, but I'm nowhere near as good as these guys are and probably never will be. So it is what it is. I accept my limitations, but I can still show you guys some cool stuff that this just goes back to that concept of being able to cancel specific things, being able to catch your opponents out, things of that nature. So actually going to toggle the minion spawn off for the first time. Okay, so two things that I want to cover. Number one, we talked about champion abilities, right? And I talked about Lee Sin specifically and how his kit works. Well, as you can see, his Q is kind of split in his abilities. If you look at the bottom, it says Sonic Wave / Resonating Strike. The first half of it is one ability. The second half is how it operates on the second part. Same thing with his W, his E, not his R. But those three abilities all have second pieces to them. So they could technically be a second ability or the second component of the first ability. So whenever I land my Q on an opponent, if I reactivate it, it jumps me to him. And as you can see, the icon at the bottom is actually changing. So that is kind of a different ability entirely. Same thing with my W. My W lets me do what's called ward hopping, or I can protect an ally. I can protect an ally by providing this little shield to them that you see, the gray health. So whenever I do that, you can see that the icon again changes into another ability entirely. And then with my E, very similar thing. So the first piece does damage and it tags them. The second piece actually slows them whenever I use it. So that again goes back to kind of how the abilities can be very nuanced, and learning all of them is really important. With Lee Sin and his ultimate, if you're not familiar with it, it's basically just a kick. And if I kick an opponent into another opponent, it knocks them up and does damage as well. So you can probably, with the Gragas stuff, with Vayne, with Jarvan, with what we've done so far in Animation Cancel, you can probably see where I'm going with this. But you always want to be looking to try and disposition or displace the enemy while you're playing Lee Sin, right? So you want to get their carry. You want to get somebody that's who they depend on for winning a team fight if you take a team fight against them, right? Or you want to knock up as many people as you can because you're providing crowd control onto the entire team, and then you're able to make a big play and the enemy team can't really do anything because they're all knocked up in the air. So again, this goes back to if I'm right here in front of the enemy and I need to be able to kick the enemy into the opponent, well, that's going to require me to flash an animation cancel. So again, you have this cast time. If you're looking at the bottom center, you have this cast time for the ultimate. So you're looking at that winding up. And that's when you have that fraction of a second to be able to actually flash slow and actually be able to animation cancel it, displace yourself, causing them to be caught off guard. Not only that, this is in this specific situation of Lee Sin, this is really helpful because a lot of people, let's say that you Q to an enemy, and then you jump to them, and then you're trying to run behind them and kick them. Well, the opponent will likely, once you jump onto them, likely flash away because they understand what Lee Sin does. They're terrified of being kicked back. And so this goes back to that concept of you're not saving a ton of time. It's not multiple seconds, but it's that fraction of a second where the enemy can potentially get away that you want to mitigate. So if I'm queuing, I'm going to want to... I messed that up. If I'm queuing, I'm going to want to start casting it. And okay, guys, that didn't happen. Nobody saw that. If I'm queuing to it, you're going to want to kick and then flash. So you're trying to want to string this together simultaneously, so that it looks very smooth, so that they're not actually able to get away. Not my best day on Lisa, and I'll admit. Let's see. Again, let's say that, their whole team's right here, and I'm right here. And then I missed that entirely, so it looks really bad. But that's okay, because mistakes happen. Now I'm just having fun with it. But again, let's say that they are right here. You can just R and then kick them into the whole team. So it's making sure that you are able to mitigate that entire cast piece. So with that, guys, I think that... Let me see what other champions I have real quick on this account. I want to see if I can show anything else that I think will be helpful. But in the meantime, you guys please feel free to start asking some questions, and we can kind of go through things on whatever questions you may have. Sejuani is another champion. I won't jump into game because I can more so talk through it. Sejuani is another champion that very similar to Gragas. Her Q makes her charge forward. Very similar concept of being able to charge forward and cancel the cast animation. Let's see. When using Jarvan, what would be a safer move or less flashy? Traditionally, the way that Jarvan engages is that you can just EQ onto somebody. So you don't necessarily, that's what I'm saying, you don't necessarily have to utilize the flash. There are situations where it's warranted, where maybe the enemy flashes down, or they're out of your range, and you can still catch them by using an EQ flash, then it works great. But if their flash is down, and if they're in range, there's no reason to try to EQ flash, because then you're just wasting your flash. So it's trying to have that balance between, like, hey, do I need to do something like this? These things aren't born to just be born out of people discovering them for the sake of just being flashy. They do look kind of flashy, I'll admit. But they're more so born out of a necessity of, oh, hey, this is how the game works. All of these abilities have animations. This is how you can not necessarily exploit it, but this is how you can understand and master the game and utilize the way that it's programmed to your advantage by utilizing this flash in conjunction with the middle of a cast to be able to do that. So as far as more safely engaging, just a traditional engage is going to be an EQ. You can also, with Jarvan, depending on how far, let's say you're going and ganking for a lane, the opponent's really extended towards your turret, and so they're very out of position. You can honestly just walk up as Jarvan, and you can use your W. That's going to shield you, that's going to slow the opponent, and then maybe they use flash, maybe they don't. If they don't have flash up, then great. But if they use flash, then you still have your EQ available because you haven't even used it, and then it's basically a guaranteed kill. Because they've already used flash, they've already used their escape, and you still have your gap closer. In addition to that, if you're familiar with playing Jarvan, you you also have your ultimate on top of that to further prevent them from actually running away. Something like an Ezreal ganking on Jarvan can kind of be a pain because, you know, he has his E to jump away as well as his flash. But using tactics like what I just described, you can do that to make him use his E. Then let's say that he uses his E to escape after slowing him with W. Then you EQ to him and he flashes away. Then you still have your ult up and then he's still trapped, right? So that's a way that you can kind of safely go about doing things. But as Jarvan, you do tend to be usually the engage on the team, so you don't always get to be the safest champion on the team. Good question, though. Amumu. Amumu is a champion that you can also animation cancel with his ultimate. You can cast his ultimate beforehand and simultaneously flash. I don't think that has changed. Zac is one that, if you guys are familiar with, and I'll actually jump in game, here's one that doesn't work that I wish did work. I used to play a decent amount of Zac. I don't as much anymore.
I was made for this. Literally.
But this is an ability that I wish it worked with animation canceling. Unfortunately, I don't believe does, unless they've changed it. Okay, so with Zac's E, basically you E and hold, and then he launches himself. Now, again, I haven't actually tested this in a while, so I'm kind of curious and excited. E onto the target and knocks them up. I wish that the way that it worked, now this, I'll admit that this would be very strong for Zac, but I wish that if I E right here, I could flash and continue the animation and actually have it knock them up. Don't believe it works that way. Yeah. Sadly, it doesn't. That's one that I wish the interaction worked that way. That would be very exciting as a Zac player. It would make for some very long distance, long range plays. But unfortunately, that is not quite how it works. Yeah, so the flash actually doesn't go off until right when you're going to hit the ground. In addition to that, you don't get the knock up, so you don't really get anything around doing that. So if you are a Zac player, make sure to not make that mistake. Unfortunately, I think the first time I decided that I was going to test that, I was in a live game, and it did not work out to my advantage. So make sure and be a little bit wiser than me. Do it in a practice tool first. But yeah, that one does not work for Zac. With that, I want to give you guys some homework to kind of go through. Homework has a negative connotation, so don't take it that way. But depending on what state you are in the game, what I want you guys to work on is, first of all, pick your position. Now, I'm not saying that you have to pick your position and that, hey, that's the position you have to stick to by any means, but pick a position to start with. Top, jungle, mid, whatever it may be. Whatever you feel like you're going to be most comfortable with, just pick something and start developing that comfort level. If you decide, hey man, I've tried this for a week and I really don't like it, switch positions. That's okay. But try to have some semblance of consistency in your play and in what you're doing. And that's going to make it easier for you to learn the game and to pick up some of the more advanced things. Beyond that, try to pick 2 to 3 champions for that. There's a lot, like we talked about in the first session, there's a lot of champions out there, right? And so if you're trying to learn everything simultaneously, it's going to be really difficult for you to be able to pick up all the other nuances of the game, all the other macro concepts, how to lane properly, so on and so forth. It's just going to make it more difficult for you to do that while you're trying to pick up, oh yeah, this is how this champion works, and this is how this one works. You're going to learn through playing your own champion and playing against other people. You're going to learn a lot of how the champions work anyway, and so you'll get exposure to them. Oh, hey, that looks really cool. Maybe I want to try playing that. And then you can try it out from that standpoint. But to start out, pick your position, pick 2 to 3 champions that you really want to focus on and focus on playing. What I would say from there is before you even get into the game every day, before you actually go play matches, spend a little bit of time in the practice tool. Just like if you warm up in basketball or football or hockey or soccer, whatever it may be, esports and competitive gaming, it's the same thing. You want to try and warm up for whenever you're going to play. So I would definitely say go take some time in the practice tool before you play, and then spend about 5 or 10 minutes actually just trying that orb walking maneuver that I showed earlier. Again, you're going to use the attack move function, and then you're going to right click to move in between your attacks. It's maybe gonna take a little bit to kind of get the rhythm of things, but the more you try and practice that, the more normal it becomes, and it's just going to be second nature at some point. Now, I'm not going to tell anybody here that, this is our developmental course, and so I'm not going to expect that anybody's going to go and immediately become, fantastic at animation canceling and understanding every champion that you can do it on and how it works entirely. But if you can familiarize yourself with it, if you can get a little bit of exposure to it, that's going to definitely help as you try to make those higher level advancements throughout climbing in the game or throughout improving, so on and so forth. So that is some extra credit, but please don't feel like that you have to actually go and take it upon yourself to know exactly how that works. If you want a good analogy, we're on the addition and the subtraction right now, right? This is very cheesy, but sorry, I can't help it. This is on the addition and subtraction side of things currently where we're at. I don't want you guys to go force yourself to learn multiplication, division, and exponents and all that stuff by trying to learn animation canceling too soon while you're worrying about other aspects of the game. So, a little bit of a cheesy analogy, but hey, it works. In addition to that, I know we talked about CSing, so work on whatever champions you picked for CSing. Work on going through the different phases of the game, early, mid, late game, and work on properly CSing with those. What you're going to see is that it's, obviously CSing in the early game is going to definitely be different than CSing in mid and late game, and you're going to see that it's a little bit more difficult with some champions rather than it is others. So just get exposure to that, get used to how you should do it, how many hits it takes, what HP the minions have to be at to actually be able to kill them with the last hit, so on and so forth. So that is the homework for today. But with that, I want you guys to please feel free to ask any questions. This is the Q&A piece of the session. In addition, before you guys leave, don't forget, we always have a survey for you guys to fill out at the end. Please take time to fill that out. Again, you get a chance at winning free RP, right? And who doesn't love free stuff, being able to get free skins, make your favorite champions look cool. Please take the time to fill that out. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear if there's other stuff that we could include, how you feel the sessions are going. So please take the time to actually fill that out. And then, of course, if you guys want any specialized one-on-one coaching, please feel free to visit myself and my team at epa.gg. Happy to help you guys out individually as well. But please post any questions that you guys have in the chat. Definitely want to make sure that we get any and every question answered and make sure that you don't walk away feeling lost on anything that I may have covered today. I can just do some cool flashy stuff on in client until somebody's not bashful and wants to step forward with a question. Flashy stuff. Alright. I embarrass myself with all that fun Lee Sin play, man. I will wholeheartedly admit, while you guys are thinking of questions to ask, I will wholeheartly admit the last few days have gone towards playing Valorant. Josh, if you're watching, please don't hate me. I'm not trying to rub that in your face. But that has mitigated some of my Lee Sin and my Jarvan practice, as you could tell. You want me to lie to you? It's not even a fun game. It's not fun at all. You're not missing out on anything.
I will struggle I will fail, but to surrender is a privilege I do not have.
Alright, so I'm going to explain something super complex while we wait for these questions to roll in, which I'm sure you guys are thinking of. I know that you're thinking of questions.
Welcome to Summoner's
They're going to be too complex of questions for me to answer, and so you're taking your time crafting the questions. I understand.
30 seconds until minions spawn.
I need no blade to strike down my foes.
So, there's this really crazy Lee Sin player, and I'm going to mess this up entirely. But for example, he, oh, wait. What he'll do
Only I can endure
is
the
he'll
dragon's
Q,
fury.
and then flash to the opponent while his Q is in midair,
Minions have spawned.
and then kick them so that he can actually jump to his Q out of danger. So, like, let's say that this is the actual opponent's tower instead of my tower. In one clip, he's like standing right here. He let's see if I can do this, guys. See, I didn't even get the angle right. But it's the guy's reaction timing is quite insane and impressive. So that is a much more advanced mechanic, but we will get into that in probably another session. But I'm not gonna bore you guys with more Lee Sin stuff. I did want to give some extra time to see if you guys had any questions. If nobody does, then we can go ahead and end today's session at that. But please, again, if you haven't filled out the survey, please make sure to fill out the survey. If you're able to, we have our again the competitive camp that's coming up next Tuesday. So if you're able to attend, then we're going to go over positioning and team fights. Would love to have you, and if this is the beginner session or the developmental session, please make sure and try to attend that. Some great stuff that we're going to be going over there as well. But I appreciate everybody that tuned in today. Feel free to hold your questions until the next session, and we look forward to catching you then. Take care.